I was stationed on a battleship, actually, and we did a lot of shooting. We got shot at. There was a lot of my friends who were boots on the ground in Iraq during that whole thing. Desert Storm didn't last that long. Like, we went in there and we did some work. It was fast. Importantly, in a fight, in a real fight, nobody's actually going to stand there while you're getting shot at, right? Nobody's going to just stand there. Everyone's moving. The principle is called getting off the X. You don't want to just stand in one spot and get shot at. You want to move to cover if you can. You suppress if it's appropriate to do so. That's not true in most civilian environments, right? The conditions matter, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of skills. There's the movement skills. There's all the weapons manipulation stuff that you're not even allowed to do on a public indoor range. You got to find people to train with that know how to do that kind of stuff, that are credible and that are going to teach you safely. And then you also understanding the applications and the use of when and where all this stuff applies, because this kind of stuff doesn't necessarily apply for self-defense. Well, the assumption for a lot of guys similar to myself that went in were like, I'm going to go do my patriotic duty. I'm going to defend freedom, bring freedom to all these other countries and all this other kind of stuff. And you learn afterwards that it's really not about all that. It's really about
Cool. Alex, pleasure to have you here, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yes. We've spent a little bit of time together doing some firearms training, had some good conversation. I actually, when we're out on the range, it's pretty intense and we're focused on what we're doing. So I don't know much about your background. I'm curious. I would like to start with your background. It's my understanding you were in the military.
Yep. Went in the military right out of high school. U.S. Navy. Did that for almost 4 years. Desert Shield, Desert Storm, all the things. That was around, I think I went in around 80, it was 89.
Why did you decide to join the Navy?
Okay, so now we're getting into some I kind of, as a young guy, sometimes you hear guys talk about this kind of stuff where like growing up, they just want to do like military things, boys being boys.
G.I. Joe, man.
Totally, man. I was that kid, it's like boys being boys, cowboys and Indians, like, playing army, all the things. Like, I was so into that stuff. To the point where in high school, this is a South Florida thing. Some people may understand this. Like,
so you did grow up in Florida?
Yeah. South Florida. Yeah. I mean, we were the kids that were shooting each other with BB guns, the whole thing. Like, that really happened. Like, it's funny. I've got a friend who's about to retire from the Navy. He's still in, by the way. We grew up together. I went in and 6 months later, he followed me and I got out. He stayed in. Dude's got an amazing story, but one of my fellow BB gun shooting at each other stories. I don't know what it was about that, man. Some dudes are just attracted to that for whatever reason. I think we all have a bit of a warrior spirit inside of us as men. And some of us just like go down that path. And so that's kind of what happened with me. I've always been like, I've always loved this country, loved what it was about. Like if I, I think I have that's shared with a lot of dudes that went into the military. A lot of them are basically just patriots, love this country and just wanted to serve it. Yeah. Which is interesting because I think after time you start to figure out things have changed. You know what I mean? Like the military of probably World War II, I'd say it's not quite the same today. And I think a lot of guys are figuring out.
In what ways?
Well, the assumption for a lot of guys similar to myself that went in were like, I'm going to go do my patriotic duty. I'm going to defend freedom, bring freedom to all these other countries and all this other kind of stuff. And you learn afterwards that it's really not about all that. It's really about follow the money. It's about politics. It's about power. Mm-hmm.
Protecting the money printer.
Yeah. Well, protecting, all of that kind of stuff. Control of oil, control of resources, control of money. Mm-hmm. Really. Yeah.
Yeah, growing up, I developed an affinity for cannabis, like we were just kind of chatting about. I didn't know you didn't know my backstory.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
So I didn't get into firearms until like 5, 6, 7 years ago because I didn't want to mix firearms in my cannabis life.
Right.
But growing up, I know the itch, man. I used to play with Nerf guns and whatnot, but I wasn't shooting my buddies with BB guns.
Yeah. So I guess just never outgrew that. You know, I signed up on the delayed entry program in high school. I was probably a junior at the time, and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do this thing. And funny thing, I didn't actually graduate high school. I dropped out my senior year because there was some family stuff that was going on. It was very complicated. I'm not going to get into it, but it was not the ideal situation for me. I ended up dropping out, and because I went in on the delayed entry program, I had a contract.
Yep.
And my deal was, you graduate high school, you get to go to the Navy, you get to go do these specific things in the Navy. And I was like, man, I broke my contract. So when high school was over, I was basically just not doing so great. I was like really depressed. Like, I'm not going to get into all the details, but I wasn't doing well, right? And one day there's a knock on the door, and I look, and it's like, there's a Navy chief, and he's like dressed blues, and then there's a first class dressed whites, and I'm like, what? Or maybe the chief wasn't in blues. I'm sorry, he was in khakis. Like, that's the chief thing. And I'm like, what the heck is going on here?
Pull the mic closer. You can migrate with it.
So I'm like, what's, you know? I answer the door, and he's like, hey, you're Alex Stanczyk. I'm like, yep. And he's like, pack your bags. You're going to boot camp. I'm like, wait a minute, I broke my contract. He's like, we know, we got you a waiver.
Nice.
I scored really high on the ASVAB, and they just wanted me to do these different things. And so I guess that they felt it was worth getting the waiver to get me in. So that's kind of how I went in.
Wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, I dropped out of high school halfway through my senior year. Because at that point in my life, I just developed such an aversion to the system as a whole. I'm like, why? And my whole thing was, and it started at the beginning of into my sophomore year. By my entire junior year, I was like, I'm not doing your homework.
Bro,
I don't give a fuck. I will not do your homework. I'll pass your test, but I'm not going to go home and spend my evening doing work if I can pass your test.
You and I had a similar kind of high school experience, because at some point, and I think you probably can relate to this, I'm looking around, looking at the teachers, I'm looking at all the things they're teaching us, and I'm going, this is all BS, man.
Yeah, well, that, and I'm looking at these people's lives.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to live like this.
Yeah, it's like you're trying to prepare me for this thing that you think I should be doing, and I'm like, this is clearly not working. Like, there's something deeply wrong with all of this.
I didn't have the words for it at the time, but now I just think it's like they're literally government indoctrination camps.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Like, I'm a huge fan of homeschool now. I homeschooled my kids, and they did some public school too, but mostly it was private school and homeschool. Just because I looked at the public school system and I'm like, this is a huge mistake.
And it wasn't as crazy as it is now.
Oh, it's even worse now.
I got a 3-year-old daughter or a 4-year-old daughter now and a newborn son. And I spent my whole life in California until I was liberated and made it here to Florida.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my wife, it was obvious. Like, she's pregnant, and we're like, there's no way we're not doing anything other than homeschool. I can't trust these people to, keep my children thinking the right things,
Yeah.
So you're in the Navy at 18 years old. You did a 4-year stretch. Did you have any like wild things? How did that experience kind of, I don't know, impact your worldviews?
Well, first of all, it saved my life probably, because I was just like, at the time I was just hanging around with some questionable characters and just doing all the things you would expect a Florida kid to be doing. And the trajectory was probably jail. If I kept going down that pathway. So in a way, I feel like it saved me. But it also helped me grow up a lot. And I think that's true for a lot of young dudes that go in, like they teach you things that they force you to be responsible.
That discipline, brotherhood, camaraderie,
all the
mission,
things.
Purpose.
All the things, like that.
Yeah, and then once you're out, you're set up better than you are right out of high school.
I think so.
You have better options. You have some income. You get some special loans or grants or whatever. You have opportunity that you otherwise don't.
Yeah, for sure. Like if you're a young guy, like high school age guy, and you have access to strong male role models, and you have access to mentors who can teach you about the realities of how business works, how economics works, how like trying to survive financially in this world works.
Elephant in the room.
It slid just a little bit. I was like, wait a minute. then you're super fortunate as a young guy. Like listen to those dudes as much as you can. But I didn't have that. Like I didn't have like aside from my dad, and I mean no discredit to him at all. He's an amazing dude still to this day. Like one of my heroes in my life. But I did not have guys who were like, let me help straighten you out, kid. Like I didn't have that. So like, I think a lot of young dudes are just lost. They don't know what the hell to do. They don't know what they're doing. Like it's just, so for a lot of young guys that do go in, I think it's super helpful. Like it'll straighten you out.
Yeah. Were your parents together?
No, they had split. And that was actually one of the reasons I dropped out.
Yeah.
Ended up getting my GED underway, deployed to the combat zone because we had a professor embedded on our ship. And he helped me do that.
GED halfway through my senior year.
Yeah.
Yeah. My parents were divorced. And for me, the impact, I mean, there was a lot of impact, negative things, I would say, that I have transmuted and overcome in my life. But one of the big problems, I think, in divorced parents is you don't have a unified front from both your parents to impose boundaries on you. So if my dad was trying to like teach us a lesson somehow and like, you know, I don't know, take things away or ground us or whatever, then it gave my mom the opportunity to like bail us out. Like, hey, well, you know, mom's got cool stuff. We go do something fun. And so,
sure.
And so I think that that's a real issue with split parents.
Yeah, for sure. And it can, in a way, it can become very counterproductive, right? Because then the parents are using that as a tool, so to speak, to gain favor with the kids and all that other kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I could see that.
And so did you see combat?
Yeah.
Yeah. What conflict at the time? Desert Storm.
Yeah.
In Iraq.
Yeah, it was basically, yeah. So I wasn't boots on the ground in Iraq. I was stationed on a battleship actually. And we did a lot of shooting. We got shot at, all the things. Yeah.
Wild.
So it wasn't quite like, my generation of dudes. Like there was a lot of my friends who were boots on the ground in Iraq during that whole thing. That was very different than what we've been dealing with, really post the Desert Storm kind of era, which is what they call GWAT or the Global War on Terror. Like this is that's an entirely different set of conflicts, and the dudes that did all that kind of stuff, it's just very different. The mission was different. The whole thing was different. Desert Storm didn't last that long. Like we went in there and we did some work.
Yeah.
It was fast relative to the GWAT, which is like more than a decade. Long time.
Yeah. Gosh, I look forward to the time when we're not all killing each other constantly, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely disheartening, these forever wars. So you got back. What was the next chapter of your life like?
So coming out of military, I just didn't really know what I wanted to do. I ended up messing around with sales for a while. I ended up I was really into computers, a bit of a computer nerd. You know, I was building my own boxes. It was back in the early days of like the 286, where you had to like completely reconfigure your RAM to play these stupid games that you wanted to play. So I was constantly like hacking around on that kind of stuff. Found it super interesting, building my own boxes, things like that. Like when the internet came out, I was one of those like super early nerds. Like, you know, I can still remember the 1600 baud modems. And then if I even got the numbers right, 56K was like super fast. Like I remember being 56K. And then it went to 128.
How old are you? What year were you going to graduate high school?
I was early 20s at that time. I was probably around 22, 23.
And what year would you have graduated high school if you walked with
89.
the class? 89. Okay. Yeah. So you're a lot older than me. I was 2003.
Yeah.
2003. And I remember the internet the whole thing was like, I'm on the internet, or my mom's on the internet, but I'm waiting for a phone call from this chick that I like. And now the landline's busy.
Yep. So So I started a business in that, helping people get connected to the internet. This is back when everything was dial up, right? Nobody knew how to do it. And then that got me running in technology. So I did technology for, I want to say close to 15 years. Ended up as a director of IT for the largest aerospace union in the country.
Wow.
And yeah. And at the same time, started a little company where we were developing video over IP tech. And this was early days stuff. This was back when like Napster was a thing and like all so bandwidth was still pretty tight. You couldn't like deliver a high definition movie over a 128K or whatever.
Yep.
Internet link, right? And it was the bandwidth was improving all the time, but we were like, well, let's do this decentralized thing. So we were actually using decentralized technology to take pieces of videos that were on lots of different people's computers, like pieces of it, reassemble it at the other end to do high definition video. And we were going out, and this was super early. I think YouTube was like alpha at the time. And I can remember sitting down with some of the execs of Netflix, showing them our technology. And they were like, they laughed at us.
Really?
Yeah. This was back when Netflix was shipping DVDs in the mail. And they're like, this is ridiculous. Nobody's going to watch movies over the internet.
You may have had some impact on them.
We were super early, you know? And so ended up selling out of that. And interestingly enough, this dovetails into the public school systems, because a couple of things happened with my kids in the public school system that I was like, yeah, no, I'm not digging this too much. Sold that, my ownership in that company. I was still working as a director of IT for that aerospace union. And like, we just agreed as a family, we're going to pull our kids out of the public school system in America, and we're going to go to Panama, Central America.
And this was in Florida?
No. I was living in Washington at the time. Yeah, we're going to go to Panama.
Really?
And I ended up living in Panama for almost a decade.
No shit.
Yeah, and that's how I ended up getting into the gold industry as well.
Yeah. So one of the things I was thinking as you're unpacking this is, at what point, like, what was your thought process and financial strategy? Were you like, you know, saving in a 401k, you bought a house, you're thinking I'm going to buy a rental property, buy some, you know,
just,
shares
I didn't really even
Microsoft.
have a strategy. I mean, I was still learning about all that stuff at the time. I was like, okay, well, what should I do? And like, just the standard stuff. This is what we recommend. Okay, fine, do that. And I can't say I really had a strategy. I was just at the time just trying to figure out my way and like, what am I going to do? You know, like what's important to me and all that other kind of stuff. And so what got me thinking about finances more deeply was two things. Number one, when I was in high school, I can remember thinking, and this was back when if you made $100,000 a year, that was a lot of money back then. Right.
Yeah.
So, and obviously with inflation, it's like that number today is probably, you got to be making probably $300,000 a year, $500,000 a year to have the same kind of lifestyle as $100,000 a year back then. But I always thought, man, if I could make that kind of money, I'm going to be set. Right. And then started making decent money, working for that union prior to moving to Panama. And I can remember thinking to myself, man, I should have piles of money laying around. I'm making good money. And I'm like, I'm still struggling. What is going on? And like, there was a massive disconnect. And I was like really irritated with the whole thing. Right. After moving to Panama, met these guys who were basically gold guys, hanging out super late at night at my house, like overlooking the ocean. We're just drinking wine. It's like 2, 3 in the morning. And like the guy starts explaining inflation to me and how it works.
And what time frame was this?
This would have been around 2007-ish, 2008-ish.
Okay, so before the financial crisis.
Yeah, well, it was like the financial crisis was just starting to heat up.
Okay.
Right? And that got me going on the rabbit hole. I'm like, wait a minute. You're telling me they're just printing endless amounts of money. And every time they do this, the money that I have buys less stuff. And they're like, yeah, that's how the thing works. That's how it was designed to work. And I'm like, what?
Oh, yeah.
And that sent me down sort of the rabbit hole of understanding like monetary theory and monetary history and how money works and all that other kind of stuff. And I was buying gold and silver at the time. Like, I'm like, wait a minute, no, dude.
Yeah.
I was like, I thought I was like a genius. I had this huge epiphany. I'm calling all my friends back in the States, like, sell everything, buy gold and silver right now. Because the whole thing was starting to unravel. Right, it was right during this time where the housing thing was totally collapsing. Like, it was all that stuff going on.
What if I told you that you could lower your tax bill and stack Bitcoin at the same time? Well, by mining Bitcoin with Blockware, you can. New guidelines from the Big Beautiful Bill allow American Bitcoin miners to write off 100% of their mining hardware investment in a single year. That's right, a 100% write-off. So if you had $100,000 of income or capital gains, you could write off that entire amount by investing it in Bitcoin mining hardware. Blockware's mining as a service allows you to start mining Bitcoin right now with minimal effort. Blockware handles everything from securing the miners to sourcing low-cost energy to configuring the mining pool. They do it all. You can stack Bitcoin at a discount every day and save big when tax season comes. So you can get started today by going to mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove. Again, that's mining.blockwaresolutions.com/breedlove.
Yeah, and at that time I was fresh in the workforce, I don't know, 20, 21 years old, selling cars for a Toyota store. And I actually remember this guy that came in, he bought several cars from me. And for like a 2-3 year period of time, he was just like, buy silver, buy silver. He was this silver bug. And and I was fresh, you know, into the workplace. I didn't have the wherewithal or, you know, to understand exactly what was happening. But when the housing market crashed, a bunch of salespeople, dude, young kids that are have houses that they shouldn't have. Everyone loses all their shit. The car business crashes. So I got a taste of it, but I wasn't old enough to really wrap my mind around what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
So I went down the rabbit hole when I closed escrow, the economic rabbit hole when I closed escrow on my first house, which was the property that I got licensed from a cannabis business. And that's when I discovered this stuff. I don't know, 32 years old or something. I'm like, wait, they can just keep printing money?
They can just print money?
Why am I paying taxes? Why am I paying taxes if they can print money? And then same thing, gold and silver. I'm like, oh, gotta get gold and silver. Fortunately, after like 12 months of going down the rabbit hole, I discovered Bitcoin. Changed my entire life. Sold my business, sold my property. So yeah. So you're in Panama, you're buying gold and silver.
Yeah.
Did
Eventually that leads to me starting a gold fund because I'm going into it like hardcore and end up starting a gold fund. First one was out of Luxembourg, rapidly learned that like trying to run a regulated fund out of Luxembourg, like the kind of margins you're going to get in a gold fund are not, it's not going to cut it. It's like way too expensive. Don't do anything out of Luxembourg, right? Started another one, ended up running that one for almost 8 years. All of our physical operations were over in Switzerland. So we were working with the big refineries over there. So we were buying and selling gold and vaulting with private vaults. And yeah, so that was quite a bit. And it was in that time frame actually that I started for the first time really studying Bitcoin on any real level. Like I actually heard about Bitcoin in 2011. And like an idiot, I didn't take it serious. I was like,
yeah,
this is a joke. This is like World of Warcraft, like internet game money. Like this is not real. I also thought like if this was real, the government was just shut it down any minute.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you were selling gold claims effectively.
Yeah, I mean, effectively, it was a fund, so you could buy shares of the fund. It was kind of like one way to think of it would be like an ETF, but it was completely private in that it wasn't trading on an exchange.
Gotcha.
So I mean, we just take the money, we buy the gold, we vault the gold. When they want to exit, we sell the gold, we send them the money.
So when you started,
or if they want the gold, we'll deliver the gold. By the way, that was an important factor.
Yeah. So you weren't of the mindset that like if you don't hold it, you don't own it.
To a degree, because with gold, you start, here's the issue. Personally, I'm a big fan of like, you do the custody, right? Here's where that starts to become a problem. If you're doing the custody and it's, let's call it $50,000 worth of gold and silver bars, how do you protect that?
Yeah.
And at what point does that become dangerous? Right? So if you've got millions of dollars of gold and silver, what are you going to do? You going to keep that in your house?
Mm-mm.
You can have dudes with guns walking around all day. Like how are you going to do that? And so there is some threshold over which you need to start thinking about, maybe it makes more sense to do some sort of professional security.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we came in. Like we didn't have small investors. You had to be an accredited investor. So when you're buying hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars worth of gold, sometimes it makes sense to have a professional.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I am curious, you know, the gold and silver bugs, a lot of them think that the gold and silver prices are being suppressed via the ETFs and the COMEX. Is that all? What are your thoughts on that? There's no way to know, right?
I don't know. There's no way really to know unless you're working very deeply. I think the thing, there's two parts of this. Number one, you know, some people are like, you know, there's no such thing as manipulation. It's like, look, the big bullion banks were caught red-handed manipulating the prices of gold and silver many times. This is not wild conspiracy theory stuff. They've got tens of billions of dollars of fines over it, right? So like, this is real, right? But that's in the short term. The real question is in the gold and silver kind of culture is, has there been like long-term organized intentional suppression of the price? That's a little harder to prove, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you think about it in terms of like, is there an incentive to do that? Yeah. Are there tools to do that? Probably. Could you keep that a secret for 30 years or 50 years? Now you're starting to get a little more like, I don't know if that's really possible.
Well, maybe because if I would imagine that a significant percentage of the money that's in gold and silver is owned by people that are not going to take custody of the gold.
Oh, for sure. Well, people ask me the difference between like gold and silver and Bitcoin. And to me, the biggest difference is Bitcoin is audited. The entire supply is audited every 10 minutes. And everybody on the planet can verify that. There's not a single person who can't look at that in real time and go, I have a current audit of the entire supply of Bitcoin. I know where it's all at, all of it, down to the last sat, right?
Which the value of that could just not be, the value of that can't be overstated. That is such a monumentally.
Well, it's massive because that leaves less room for what I call shenanigans. So like, to take it back to the gold and silver thing, it's like, if you have massive amounts of gold and silver in what's called third-party custody, some professional is vaulting it, some bank or some private fund or whatever it is you're doing, right? The problem with that setup is it's a third party and you have to trust them. And you yourself can't verify that. Now, granted, they have auditors that come in. We had auditors, right? That's the accepted way of doing things because how else are you going to do it? But the downside of that is that's the best we ever came up with. And what's the problem there? Well, the problem there is those auditors are humans. There's redundant checks. There's governance. You know, there's everybody's looking at each other and making sure everybody's correct. So to some sense, I mean, it's probably fairly accurate, but the end result problem is as an end user, you don't truly know.
Right, and you can't know what the total global supply of gold and silver is.
You can't know because a lot of that is private. And then, there's other issues involved with that too. Is that like take GLD, for example. And I don't know if this is still the case, but this was the case probably in the 2019 timeframe when I was deeply reviewing the prospectus, looking at possibly launching some kind of similar thing, whatever, when we were doing research for one of our things. And like one of the issues is that they use what's called sub-custodians. So what that means is that like they might have a main custodian named and they might have audits of all of that, but the sub-custodians, they're just taking their word for it.
Interesting.
So you don't know what's going on there. You don't know if they have it or if they don't have it. You don't know if it's been leased or lended or it's some otherwise encumbered. They say it's not, but you don't really know. And that's part of the problem.
Well, then the energy that goes in, the energy and the resources to sustain that model. You have to have insurance policies. If one of these custodians gets robbed. Like, I mean, it's not as good as Bitcoin at all. Not even remotely close.
I think it depends upon the use case too. I would say this is so like when it comes to Bitcoin, I'm a sovereign money guy. I believe in self-custody. I think doing self-custody is the preferred method. However, that's as a person, not necessarily as an institution, right? Because when you start talking about institutions, there's other factors. Institutions are managed by, if they're managing other people's wealth, they're now fiduciaries. What does that mean? It means they're legally responsible for how that stuff is handled. And if it's mishandled, they can get sued. And they do get sued, right? All the time for mishandling stuff like that. So they have other considerations. Like if you're a pension fund or you're an insurance company or you're the CEO of a public corporation, like a lot of people are like, well, just do the self-custody yourself and like show us the receipts. And it's like, well, do they really want to take that liability on? Like, what if they mess it up? And this is why professional custody exists for a lot of these types of things and probably will continue to exist. It's just a different part of the spectrum.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about Fort Knox?
Not much.
Yeah.
I used to wonder, at this point, I wonder if it even matters. The answer is it's impossible to know.
Even if Elon and Doge and Trump, they go through there, they put it on TV, the gold could not be real. Like they could totally put on a big show.
Well, to be absolutely certain, you would literally have to pull, to be absolutely certain, right? They have all these protocols in place to basically assume that it's legit. In other words, and this is going into like industrial type uses of gold and how it's controlled and how it's secured and all that other kind of stuff. There's this thing called the good delivery system, right? So the good delivery system is a bunch of refineries throughout the world who all sort of standardize on specific standards, and they are accredited good delivery refineries, meaning they can refine gold, silver to a specific purity, and they're certified to do this, and they can prove it, and they have the lab results and all this other kind of stuff. There are a certain number of referees in this system where they're basically, I think there's maybe 5 of them. Number may be different now, but back in the day it was 5. And what these referees would do is they would certify other refineries to be capable of producing metal to a certain degree of purity, so on and so forth. They would certify them. There's this whole process, right? So in the institutional world, when you're acquiring gold and you're not buying it from some other person, you can literally go to these refineries and say, I want to be absolutely certain that this stuff is legit. Put it through the refinery, melt it. Let's make absolutely certain.
That makes sense.
Right? Once it comes from the refinery, as long as it stays inside the good delivery system, which consists of certain banks, certain private vaults, there's approved security companies that can move good delivery gold. The point is that you have a chain of custody from refinery, you know it's pure, into the custody of like certified security companies who are certified to move it, into the hands of either banks or private vaults that are also certified as good delivery system providers, essentially. So you have a continuous chain of custody in a circular, trusted system that as long as it stays in there, you have a fair idea that it's probably legit. But if you pull it out of that,
it seems so archaic.
I mean, you're talking about all these steps to verify authenticity, right?
Yeah.
So it's like when you have Fort Knox, for example, they probably melted all that stuff, casted those bars, put them into Fort Knox, right? And when they did it in separate vaults inside of Fort Knox. And the way you typically do this kind of stuff is you'll create seals that are considered tamper-proof. In other words, if you break the seal and you open the thing, it's going to be obvious that was opened.
Yeah.
So assuming this thing has never been opened from the time that came straight from the refinery and put it in the vault, it should still be there and it should still be legit. But how long has it been since we actually verified that? It's been, I don't know when the last time we verified it. In fact, they were talking about it when Elon went in and they were like, let's do the Doge thing. They were talking about, let's audit the bars in Fort Knox. And it's like, bro, if you really want to audit that, you need to break all those seals. You have to pull every bar out of there, run them through a refinery, melt them to be absolutely certain, recast them, and put them back in. And I think they looked at the logistical cost and complexity of doing that, and they're like, nah.
Yeah.
We're going to call it good, man.
Yeah, that's crazy. Absolutely nuts. Since we're talking about gold, Peter Schiffs of the world are sure having a good moment now.
Oh, absolutely. And by the way, for all the metals holders out there, congratulations, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's ripping. Like, gold's over 5,000, silver's over 100. I think silver went as high as 118 last time I looked at it. It's back down a little bit. So is gold, but like absolutely ripping. So that's great. And then, Bitcoin compared to gold, because this is the eternal debate nowadays, right? Gold or Bitcoin. Bitcoin didn't do that good in 2025. So they are like extra excited about it.
Very underwhelming in terms of price, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I unloaded my gold and silver position. I had owned no gold, no silver. It's all 100% Bitcoin. And even with the price and what, with Bitcoin and what gold and silver have done over the last year or so, I still am very satisfied with my decision.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I mean, I look back at it like I was buying gold at $6.50 an ounce back in 2007 timeframe, and I was buying silver at like $15. And if I had like waited until now, that would be probably close to a 700% increase. But that's actually, doing that math is actually one of the things that switched me on to Bitcoin, because I was looking at Bitcoin in the same time frame. I'm like, millions of percentage point gains, not hyperbolic. Millions of percentage point gains. I'm like, versus 700%. I'm like, this is back when I was looking at like 2019, 2020 time frame. Doing that math was one of the things that flipped me from metals to Bitcoin.
And you unloaded your metal position?
Most of it, yeah.
Yeah. The thing that really, so the Sailor series solidified my, position and understanding with Bitcoin. But then listening to his keynote, I believe it was his keynote in Prague in 2023, and he's talking about thermodynamics and half-lives. Mm-hmm. If you're increasing the supply of gold at 2% a year, the gold supply doubles over 35 years.
Yeah.
That blew my mind. And then real estate, if you're in a 1% tax jurisdiction, you got 1% annual average maintenance cost. You got $1 million, let's say, property that's paid for. You lose half the value over 35 years. It's a 2% energy loss. So finality of supply, true scarcity, like that's what blew my mind. That's what pushed me over the edge, where I'm like, all right, I'm all in on this thing. That, and I was a little younger. I kind of believed this Bitcoin can change the world in the ways that I want to see. So I was willing to take the risk. Because when I first discovered Bitcoin, I was like, they're going to shut it down.
Yeah,
this is going to get shut down. There's just no way that they're going to be okay with this.
Yeah. I remember, so this is one of the things that kept me away from it when I was in gold, was there was this guy, I think it was called eGold. There was a dude who started this thing where it was like, we're going to back these digital tokens by gold. You can trade the digital tokens, whatever. And I remember that guy got raided. Like, tactical teams and the whole deal. The problem, ultimately, I figured out later, is that they knew who he was and they knew where the servers were. So it was a centralized operation with a single point of failure. They could just go to the single point of failure, and that's how they compromise it. And I think that guy might actually still be in jail.
Wow.
But that's back then. I was like, yeah, Bitcoin's very similar. They're just going to shut it down at some point. They're going to figure out where all these servers are. It was obviously before I studied it, right?
Yeah. And you had a computer background.
Yeah, and
I didn't.
Not only did I have a computer background, but that company that I started, that we built that video technology, was a decentralized technology. So when I finally figured out that part about Bitcoin, that was a huge light bulb moment for me. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Oh, in fact, let me back up. I think it was around, it was after the crash of 2017, the end of 2017, I thought I was a genius because I had bought a little Bitcoin, sold it at the end, and I'm like, look, it's a gigantic bubble. This is Beanie Babies, pet rocks. We're never going to hear from this thing again. And I thought I was a genius, right? Short term, that was a good trade, but long term, I had no idea what I was doing. I saw Bitcoin probably was around 2018, 2019 timeframe. It's continuously consolidating and making higher highs. And I'm thinking, this thing is going to run again. And that, frankly, that ticked me off a little bit. I'm like, wait a minute. This should not be here. Why hasn't the government shut this thing down by now? And so I started doing research to answer that question. Why hasn't the government shut it down? And that's when I stumbled onto, after, I don't know how long, I was probably a couple hundred hours of research in, and I realized, oh, wait a minute. This thing has been downloaded hundreds of thousands of times. It's on computers all over the planet, and in fact, on satellites. There is no way they're putting this back in the box. They can't stop it. That's why they haven't stopped it, because they can't.
They would have if they could have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wild. Yeah. Wow. So 2020 comes around. COVID. Where were you during COVID?
I think I was living in North Dakota. No. I was in Washington at the time. For about a year, I was living out in Washington, and that's when COVID rolled in. And that was mind blowing for me. And it was actually pivotal in my journey from gold to Bitcoin, because managing this gold fund, right? And I'm starting to study Bitcoin, which is really weird, because I'm like, I'm at that point in time where I'm like, there's something to this and I need to understand why. So I started out like maybe 30 minutes a day, just kind of looking at it, reading a couple articles, whatever. Turns into an hour a day, turns into 2 hours a day. At one point, I'm like talking to clients about gold. I hang up the phone and I'm opening up the Bitcoin book and I'm reading the Bitcoin book, right? So like, there's already this disconnect starting to occur, and I'm already starting to think, man, this is not making this much sense. And then during COVID in Switzerland, at the height of COVID, they grounded all the airplanes. You couldn't land, you couldn't take off. That was it. And I remember waking up one night thinking, whoa, if I get a call from one of my investors and they're like, Alex, I want you to deliver $20 million of gold bars to this country over here in this vault, I could not do that. And that's what you call a failure to deliver in that industry, which is not good, right? This is reputational risk, all this other kind of stuff. Besides not, I mean, you could claim force majeure, like the whole country's locked down, this is not our fault, all that other kind of stuff. But it still was a moment where I realized, so the issue with gold compared to Bitcoin is, with gold, in order to have true final settlement, it has to change physical hands, like from me to you, or from that vault to that vault, or from this guy to that guy, or whatever the case may be. You can do it on paper, but that's not really true final settlement. You're just making a ledger entry, right? So theoretically, yeah, the gold moved, but possession is 9/10 of the law. So if you don't actually have that under your custody or under allied custody, so to speak, that's potentially a problem. And so that's when I realized, like, in order to get final settlement with gold in substantial quantity, it requires the cooperation of tons of humans. The vault security guys, the vault guys, the security truck guys, the ground crews at the airport, the customs people, the air crews. Same thing on the other side where it's going. Anybody could screw that up, technically. And if they don't want to cooperate with you for whatever reason, like the planes are grounded, you just can't do it. You're stuck, right?
So the best solution to hedge yourself against currency debasement is this physical metal that you can't do anything with unless you can move it through supply chains. You can't flee a country with it.
Yep.
If some psychopath wants it, they'll kill you and take it.
Yep. So you've got all these issues, right? And that's when I realized, I was like, wait a minute. You're telling me that with this Bitcoin thing, I can send any amount of value to the other side of the planet basically instantly at almost no cost. I don't need anybody's permission. I don't need anybody's cooperation, and no one can stop me. I was like,
yeah. Yeah.
It was in that moment I knew with absolute clarity I needed to
pivot the strategy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The physical element, the incentive to violence. I think it was in 2020, 2021, Robert did a keynote. It was called Taking versus Making. He's talking about the incentive to violence somebody wants something that you have and it's physical, they just kill you and take it. If they want what you have and they can't get it, if they kill you, now you need to come up with a deal. Like that is so profound, and that kind of, parallels or ties into Lowry's work as well. Kinetic power projection versus electric power projection. And then that goes into firearms and the ability to protect yourself.
It does.
Yeah. So you were in the Navy. At what point, you've always taken that serious. You've always been well armed, lived in places where you could be well armed, you trained.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit and what you're working on with firearms training, because I've had the pleasure of shooting with you a handful of times now, and it is absolutely exhilarating. There is something about getting all geared up with a plate carrier, a battle belt, pistol, your rifle, and knowing how to use that stuff. Like, it's empowering.
Yeah, absolutely.
It really, really is.
Okay, so there's kind of two sides to this. One is from a personal defense perspective, and then the other is kind of like what you were just mentioning, right? So we'll talk about that in a minute. But to dovetail it into Bitcoin, when you are, and there's different ways to do custody in Bitcoin. You can do institutional custody where there's a third party guarding it for you, just like with gold, where there's institutional protection for that. There's hybrids of that where they hold keys and you hold keys. There's another method where it's multi-sig, but all in your custody. You're controlling all the keys. And then there's single sig custody as well, where you're also doing the custody. So when you have a situation where you're controlling the custody, like back when by the way, after the gold days, I then joined the industry in Bitcoin, and I worked for a company called Swan Bitcoin for like 4 years. And I was one of the managing directors working in the private wealth group. And like, I used to have this conversation with clients all the time where it's like the really cool thing about self-custody is that like you're like totally in charge. You are completely in charge. The disadvantage is you're completely in charge because your OpSec literally becomes the security for your wealth. And if you have zero OpSec, or if you've never thought about this stuff before, maybe you should.
I'm curious, how many... if you were to break down like a percentage of the clients that were interested in purchased Bitcoin, how many of them were adverse to self-custody because they didn't want that level of responsibility?
Quite a few, surprisingly, a large number, because I came into the space from the perspective of sovereign finances. Like, that's why I was a gold guy, right? I was like, you need to have this form of money outside the control of what the systems say the money is, right? Because what if something happens? There were lots of reasons I was a sovereign money guy, but so I believed in self-custody. So it was shocking to me to see that probably 70% of people that were coming and saying, I want to buy Bitcoin, were not super comfortable with self-custody.
One of my highest health priorities is keeping my brain in top shape. To take care of my brain power, I do many things, such as striving to read, write, exercise, and meditate daily. One of the latest tools in my brain power toolkit is MindLab Pro. MindLab Pro is a nootropic supplement that is scientifically proven to enhance your brain power. When I take MindLab Pro, my mind feels like it has a better grip on the world, my thinking is more lucid, and the articulation of my speech is radically improved. MindLab Pro has been tested in rigorous, double-blind, placebo-controlled human trials and has been proven to enhance brain power for users in every age group. MindLab Pro is an advanced formulation of 11 nootropic ingredients and is backed by research from over 1,400 human trials conducted over the past 32 years. So if you're looking to enhance your brain power, MindLab Pro is an excellent solution. Go to mindlabpro.com/breedlove to start enhancing your brain power today. Again, that's mindlabpro.com/breedlove.
These are individuals that don't have high levels of mistrust for the system or the government.
No, some did. It's just, that's not really the issue. The issue is more like, look, for hundreds of years, humans have not done self-custody. The banks hold your money. Your stockbrokers hold your equities or your securities, or your registered investment advisors helping you with that, and your retirement accounts are holding your retirement assets, and someone else is guarding all that stuff for you. And it's been this way for hundreds of years now.
Yeah.
Right? So we have really no recollection as humans today, if you're in the West anyway, of like protecting your own wealth. Like you're responsible to protect your own wealth. Nobody remembers doing that.
Yeah.
So it's a weird concept for a lot of people. Like they understand fundamentally why it could be important, but we still don't have a lot of experience doing it. And that makes people uncomfortable.
That makes sense. Yeah, I had a unique life path as a cannabis producer. I was living cash. It was cash for 17 years of my life. I had a gold and silver position, literally bearing Pelican cases of cash and gold and silver. When I got rid of all the gold and silver and cash, like conceptually, I knew how big of a deal it was to have a multi-sig and have, an inviolable form of property. But when it finally was done, like I can't even put into words the physiological relief. Like 17 years of my life, like how do I hide this? How do I hide all this shit?
Yeah.
I got to keep it from being robbed or burned down or even seized by law enforcement, even though I was lawful. It was kind of this guilty till proven innocent dynamic within the cannabis business in California, really most legal jurisdictions. So powerful. So in that sense, I was well primed to understand the importance of Bitcoin and self-custody.
Yeah. So, if you're doing custody yourself, you're basically responsible for that. And so there's a level of understanding of self-defense that might be useful.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who have talked to me privately about this, and they're like, look, I'm a known person in Bitcoin. It's a concern. And so, yeah, like, if you live in America, then like I'm a huge advocate of like owning firearms, knowing how to use them. That's really important.
That's a very important part.
Training with them, not just once or twice either, but regularly.
Well, and it's not just going to an indoor shooting range and putting 100 or 200 rounds through your EDC carry pistol.
Correct.
It's like weapons manipulation, the gear, like tactical moving. Like when we were training the other day, or I don't know, a couple of weeks ago, and we're running. Like that was interesting. I'm like, all right, I'm running. I got this load. I'm literally shooting and running at the same time. Like that's a good skill. I would have never really thought. I don't know. Maybe I would have thought to do so, but you can't get that if you go to a shooting range.
Yeah, correct.
You can shoot the pistol, but like in a real life situation, you're pretty limited.
Correct. So my recommendation is, like do all the things, right? Like if you're going to do this, do it right. Learn how to use it. Learn how to be safe. Most importantly, learn how to be safe. That's the first thing. Learn how to be safe. And then on top of learning how to be safe, if you have an opportunity to get with someone who can teach you something deeper than standing on a line in an indoor range and just shooting down range, there's a lot more to it, right? There's how do you carry it? How do you draw from holster safely? How do you do all this other kind of stuff? And then importantly, in a fight, in a real fight, nobody's actually going to stand there while you're getting shot at, right? Nobody's going to just stand there.
No.
Everyone's moving, right? So the principle is called getting off the X. You don't want to just stand in one spot and get shot at. You want to move to cover if you can. You suppress if it's appropriate to do so. That's not true in most civilian environments, right? The conditions matter, all that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of skills, as you mentioned. There's the movement skills. There's all the weapons manipulation stuff that you're not even allowed to do on a public indoor range. So you got to find people to train with that know how to do that kind of stuff, that are credible and that are going to teach you safely. And then you also understanding the applications and the use of when and where all this stuff applies, because this kind of stuff doesn't necessarily apply for self-defense, right? This is an entirely different thing, right? It can apply for self-defense. Everything's contextual, right? But it just, it depends.
And what would you say to people who live in states like California where the gun laws are very unfavorable?
Move.
Yeah.
Leave.
Do you spend much time concerned about thinking, we could end up in a civil war situation, we could be evaded?
Yeah, those thoughts do occur to me, and there is some small percentage chance greater than zero that all these things are possibilities, right? And in America nowadays, I think there is a sense right now that we're probably closer to a potential civil war than maybe even the last 200 years. It might be the most. It's kind of scary if you think about it, where we are right now.
Big time.
So there's a potential for that. There's potential for civil unrest. I mean, the reasons so to break it down into two kind of like groups, right? Of looking at firearms and training and all that kind of stuff. For one is just self-defense, like everyday carry. How do I protect my home? How do I protect my home against stuff if I'm doing custody of my Bitcoin, all that kind of thing. And just getting a basic understanding and awareness of firearms and how to use them and how to defend yourself, right? In a completely self-defensive capacity. Then there's this whole other area. And by this whole other area, what I mean by that is I just go back to kind of like the founding fathers of the country. The founding fathers of the country looked at the having everyone own firearms. Like they thought that was a good idea. And they basically said that every able-bodied person is de facto the militia. You guys all make up the militia. The militia consisted of the entire body of the people. And that essentially everybody should own these implements of war and train with them, keep them well maintained, have as good equipment as you could have, train with the people that you know regularly around you. And that is a core part of being an American for multiple reasons. So it's like, if the homeland gets invaded, that's one potential reason. If there's massive civil unrest in your area, that's another potential reason. Civil war might be a reason. Other things like that could definitely be a thing. You know, here's another example. Like, what if there's an extended grid down kind of a situation? Like there's an EMP strike or something happens where and I'm not talking about like the grid goes down, you lose power for 2 days. That's one thing. I'm talking about like extended months and months of no power. That's things will get very strange very quickly, right? So like, a lot of people don't think about this kind of stuff, and I'm not sitting there saying these kind of things to scare anybody. It's not really my objective. I don't operate my life on this idea that these small percentage chances things of occurring should dominate my thoughts or anything like that. But it's like, I come from a perspective of I would rather be prepared and not have to use it ever than be caught in a situation where I'm completely unprepared, right? So that's this concept of warrior in the garden versus a gardener in a war. Like, it would suck to be a gardener caught in a war.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't want to have a situation where like something happens and I'm just completely unable to defend myself or the people that I care about.
Yeah. I spent a lot of years of my life concerned, probably really honestly, excessively concerned about EMP, grid down, World War III, Civil War, you know, and I lived in a very, probably one of the best places to live in the States short of Alaska for a situation like that. It was 5 hours from San Francisco to get to me. It was 5 hours to go to Oregon and 5 hours to get to Redding. So I was in a very isolated place. I had land, I had a well, you know, I went as far as and I still to this day, I have generators, Honda 2000 watt generators in Faraday bags. Like I'm kind of on that extreme end, tons of freeze dried food. So I do, you know, I don't think about it a whole lot today, but like I definitely, when it was time for me to move from Humboldt here to Miami, I had that, you know, there's a few moments of being like, I'm getting into the urban jungle. It makes me uncomfortable.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was pretty relieved to get connected with you and start training.
Yeah. And it's been good. It's been a lot of fun.
It's super fun. Serious, but fun.
Yeah.
Very
I mean,
fun.
Obviously it's a serious endeavor, right? You need to be super safe and you need to hopefully learn things that are useful.
Yeah.
But it's also very fun. So people who've never tried it, I highly recommend it.
So you're working on building a group of individuals nationwide. Do you want to talk about any of that, Citizen Rifleman?
Sure. So sort of the way this started out is that like in my journey with firearms, so I'm a certified instructor, insured, all that other kind of stuff. I started doing firearms training back in the Navy like 30 years ago, and they just kind of never stopped, right? But in my journey, at one point, I started competing with USPSA and IDPA and all these other different things, and not sitting here claiming I was like all that in a bag of chips. I learned very rapidly. There's a lot of dudes who shoot way better than me, and I need to get better, right? What I did learn through those experiences is that they do teach you how to shoot way more accurately, way faster. They do teach you how to move and all that other kind of stuff. However, I will say that, like, this is just my opinion, by the way. I'm not pooping on these kind of organizations whatsoever. So take this with a grain of salt. If you like the food, eat it. If you don't, treat it like a buffet. I feel like the kind of things that I was starting to do habitually there, in a fight, if you did those same things, they might be counterproductive to a fight with firearms versus doing these.
What would be an example?
Well, a performance competition rig is completely different than the kind of stuff you would use, like if you wanted to train with a group of guys and be prepared for like civil unrest or like grid down kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You're running around basically with holsters with no retention. It's all about speed. How fast can I get this thing out of the holster and start slinging lead down range? While that's important, if you have no retention, if you're wearing a competition belt and things do go sideways, and like, that's not great. Like you could be trying to traverse terrain or climb over things or whatever. That thing could fall right out, or somebody could just walk up behind you, just snatch it from you. Right.
Makes sense.
So, and you're training with this kind of equipment. So you're developing habits based on this kind of equipment. So that's just one example. And then also the whole thing about like, essentially standing still shooting, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
How you use cover, et cetera. Because like in USPSA, your consideration is not how do I peek out of cover as slowly as possible, exposing the minimal amount as possible to the enemy in order to direct fire down range. You're like, how fast can I get around this thing and shoot that target that's not shooting back at me?
Yeah, yeah.
Right? So it's a different mentality. And so I found that what I was really looking for was a group of people that I could train with to learn more like citizen rifleman type of skills. Like I personally consider it a civic duty to own a rifle, know how to use it, train with people you know locally, and know how to operate with those people as a team, right? I couldn't find that anywhere.
And not to be a bunch of fucking rebels, but to be responsible and be able to take care of yours, people you care about and the people in your proximity if there was a real serious problem.
Correct. And this is not about so a lot of the USPSA, IDPA type guys look at training with kit, plate carriers, rifles, all the things that guys in the military or law enforcement do. They look at that and they go, you guys are just LARPing. There's no reason for that stuff. You're not military. You're not law enforcement. You have no need for that whatsoever. And you know what? I'm sorry, but I disagree.
Yeah, tell that to the 100+ million people who have been slaughtered over the last however many thousands of years.
I think it's our civic duty, and I don't think it's LARPing to learn how to properly use that kind of stuff. And I'm not saying that we're going to have a situation where you have to, right? But if you don't do that and someone else is doing that and one of those kind of situations do occur, you're just at a disadvantage. And I'm the kind of person who's like, well, I would rather not be at that disadvantage if I can avoid it.
Yeah. What do you think about the societal shift and pertains to the mentality around that kind of thing? Because for me, two things that blew my mind. I moved to Florida. It goes open carry. So I'm now living in a state where the gun laws are getting better. That's different than what I experienced my entire life in California.
Yep.
Then another thing, I guess, is just funny to comment on. For our training session, their most recent one, I ordered a couple thousand rounds of 9mm and 5.56. I go to my front door and I was just going to get my mail. I wasn't expecting them to show up so fast. I look down and there's 2 boxes. They've been sitting there for at least 8 hours. It was like 9:30 at night. I'm like, that's That's my 3,000 rounds of ammunition sitting at my doorstep. Like mind blown. And what's a trip too is I feel significantly less vulnerable rolling through downtown Miami than I did in Santa Monica or in the Bay Area. It's like there's, you know, I heard Sailor's the first person I heard say this. I'm sure he didn't come up with this. It's probably an age-old adage, but a well-armed society is a polite society.
Yep.
And people who can protect themselves are less prone to be fucked with. And so do you think this is just a classic case of disarm the population so they're easier to control?
I think there's a spectrum here. And I think that, like, if you look at the way the country started, right? A firearm was a tool and just about everybody had one when you needed it to survive. You hunt, you know, it was like part of it was no different than a hammer. Like most dudes have a hammer, right? Back in the early days of this country, everybody had a rifle. It was just like part of your toolkit. And over time, after the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, you have the population start to aggregate into cities, and the need for having a firearm as a tool has been kind of removed from your daily existence. And so now you have generations of Americans growing up who have no familiarity with firearms. And this is where the culture shift has occurred, in my opinion, because people by nature, this is a human nature thing, and this is not criticizing anybody, people are afraid of things they don't understand or are not familiar with. If you are a kid and you grow up around firearms and your dad takes you hunting, or you go to the range regularly and you learn how to respectfully treat this thing and be safe, and you know how to properly use it as a tool, this is completely normal to you.
Yeah.
Right? Like when I lived up in North Dakota, it wasn't so long ago where the guys that lived up there would tell me, like, we used to drive to high school with a shotgun just in the rack in my truck because we're going to go hunting after school. Like, it was normal. Everybody did this. You'd be looked at like you were weird if you didn't, right?
And you know, I want to just add this, and I'm not a historian, and I have no idea, but I would assume there was less school shootings, ironically.
Yeah, like if you look back at the history of the United States, like school shootings is a relatively new phenomenon.
My conspiracy brain goes off on that one though. MK Ultra, weird crap. I have no idea, but there's major. You got that's the mental health, but then you have all these things kind of colliding at the same time, and it seems to be kind of obvious that there's some powers that be that want to disarm the population.
Sure, there's probably that too as part of the spectrum. There are probably some people who would like to see the population disarmed, right? Why? Because when you do that, like look at every place that's ever been done before, right? And they usually coincide with sort of communist movements or authoritarian / dictatorship movements, and it's usually not pretty for the people after that occurs. I mean, some people might say that there have been more people killed by their own governments than by individuals with firearms, right? So that's definitely a concern, and this has always been a concern of Americans. So yeah, I think there's a bunch of Americans who are afraid of it, and I also think that they're afraid of it mostly because they're not familiar. Like as an instructor, I will tell you that there have been plenty of times where I've taken someone who had no experience with firearms, never touched one before, absolutely terrified. You know what I mean? They're afraid to touch it. It could be completely unloaded. I'll unload it. I'll show them that it's unloaded. They're still afraid of it.
I know the feeling. I remember when I bought my first pistol. This was like 2019. I was like, wow, this is for real. It was a thing. Like it took me a little while to get comfortable. Even the first time we went shooting, I was rolling concealed. I'm like, all right, I'm putting this thing back in the holster right above my junk. Now I'm much more comfortable with it.
Yeah, and that comes
not reckless by any means.
And that comes with familiarity and training, right? And then there's that same cohort of the population that is generally afraid of what they don't understand because they're not familiar. Also looks a lot of times at guys who do train with firearms and they go, "Oh, well, you're just trying to be bravado, and you're just one of these guys who's looking for trouble or looking for a fight and all that kind of stuff." It's actually the opposite of that. I'm not going to say that people like that don't exist. There are definitely humans are weird, man. There's a lot of weird humans out there. But I think most of the sort of pro firearm population is very just more even keeled. They understand the ramifications of what they're doing. And by the way, if you don't understand the ramifications, you probably should figure that out before carrying firearms or assuming you can defend yourself with them. And you have there's a right to self-defense that doesn't come from governments. This is very important. There's a right as a human being to defend yourself. You have a right given to you, in my opinion, by God to defend yourself. This is not granted to you by the government. The 2A, a lot of the argument is like, well, the 2A gives you permission to have guns. No, it's the opposite. 2A was enacted to restrict the government from messing with your own rights to be armed. And being armed, by the way, I believe that being able to be armed is directly tied to freedom. I believe even to this day, if I'm not mistaken, there's a canton in Switzerland where the men, when they turn out to vote, they carry swords.
Really?
Yeah. To show, like, look, we're free men.
I like
free
that.
men don't need to ask permission to carry a weapon if you're free.
Would you say that it's irresponsible to own a firearm and not know how to use it and not be very proficient with it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's an
and I
important
think you
takeaway.
should not do that. Like, if you own a firearm, you should learn how to use it. Absolutely.
So there's a very special place called the farm at Okefenokee. It's a 1,000-acre regenerative farm community about 45 minutes northwest of Jacksonville, Florida. The farm is a completely off-grid community. It has total food, water, and energy independence. Everything on the farm is 100% organic, and it even features wild boar and bear hunting. The farm at Okefenokee is right next to the Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, where you can do camping and canoeing tours. So if you're like me and you're interested in the self-sovereign lifestyle, then you can get your own lot on the farm at Okefenokee if you tell them that I sent you. Once you get a lot, you can build one of 3 custom cabin options. So if you value freedom, self-sovereignty, and living in touch with nature, then join me and my family. We have lot number 21, and we're going to be building a cabin there starting December 2025. To learn more about the farm at Okefenokee, go to okefarm.com and make sure to tell them that I sent you.
You want to speculate a little bit on like where we're going as far as a country? Do you believe in the idea that we are decentralizing and that this central control that we have is going to fragment and break up over time? Because it really blows my mind now that I've moved from one state I lived my whole life into another that is vastly different. And I'm like, okay, well, how does that work out over time? Then obviously being a Bitcoiner and look at the world through the lens of Bitcoin, I don't know how we can't kind of fragment and go the opposite direction. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure. I mean, as a Bitcoiner, the way I look at that is you're familiar with this concept of the fourth turning, right? This is a fourth turning. I mean, whether you believe in that concept of the fourth turning or not, the things that they describe in a fourth turning are definitely happening. This is all observable, like loss of trust in institutions, like just lots of sort of chaos in what we've long established institutions over time. There's a lot of corruption going on. There's like it's just massive upheaval. Then you look at other factors like the debt of the United States of America continues to compound and continues to grow. They're spending more money than they take in taxes. I mean, like all of this from an economic perspective is like not good, right? And there are a lot of people who argue that mathematically it's baked into the cake. It's only a matter of time that system cannot continue in its current form, right? So that has to be replaced by something too. And then you have all of these other sort of forces in play where you've got the deflationary forces of technology and all of the rapid increases in productivity that we're seeing, all the stuff that's going to happen from AI, which is theoretically going to accelerate this exponentially, right? Fighting against the inflationary forces of the modern banking system that requires inflation, because if you have deflation,
And so the whole thing goes insolvent.
The whole thing can just collapse like a house of cards, right? So those things kind of fighting against each other. And then you have this centralization, decentralization thing, forces sort of fighting against each other. And you've got all of these moves towards decentralization because the centralizing forces are essentially by their nature taking away freedom of humans. And there's a lot of humans who are like, yeah, I don't like that. Like, I don't like continuously more sort of draconian rules being placed on top of me, right? So that's really how Bitcoin emerged, right? Bitcoin emerged as an alternative to the sort of centralized banking system that we've been dealing with for the last couple hundred years, that, as it turns out, might not be that great for humanity. It's great if you're one of the sort of stakeholders of that system, like if you own the banks and if you own a lot of assets, right? Because of the Cantillon effect, the way this works is they print. People who have assets already get richer and richer and richer, but it's actually extracting all the wealth from the rest of the population. So maybe 1% of the population, maybe even 10% of the population is getting richer and richer and richer. Everybody else is getting objectively poorer and poorer and poorer all the time.
Yeah, the property owning class is getting wealthier at the expense of the non-property owning class.
Correct. And so add that in demographically, where you've got all of these young people who are looking at it going, what American dream, man? Like, the average house is $500,000. I can't even afford groceries. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right? And that is like a recipe for like, that has to be fixed somehow, right?
Yeah,
that can
I
lead
get
to
concerned that
outcomes.
that's going to be, the government's going to, you're going to have martial law. They got to clamp down. You need to be in this digital prison, UBI.
Well, there are governments all around the world where this is happening, right? They're in the UK. They just greenlit 15-minute cities, which is the WEF thing for the longest time, right? And it's so funny because you got these two different camps, and you have all this one camp over here is like, that sounds really crazy, but you guys are doing this. And then you've got them going, no, we're not doing that at all. And then as it turns out, they actually are doing that. Like, we've seen this happen over and dozens of examples, right? Well, they just did it in the UK. There's a city that, they're going to break it into 6 different zones. And my understanding is you get to cross those zones 3 times in a day. And if you exceed that, they fine you.
Wow.
It's control of movement, right? Control of movement, control of food, control of energy, and essentially also control of money. These are the primary tools necessary to control the human population. If you have those things, then you can control the people. So that's, if you're the kind of person who wants to have a completely top-down, centralized, controlled human existence, then yeah, you want control of movement, you want control of the food. You definitely want control of the money.
Well, let's travel down a different timeline if things work out really well.
Mm-hmm.
So we got Bitcoin is, I like the way I think about it, the Trojan horse of freedom is in the castle. We got governments around the world grappling with this thing. Trump signed the SBR executive order. We got these ETFs. When you think about potential for a positive outcome for our future, what does that look like?
I think it looks like decentralization, actually. And by decentralization financially, I mean people shifting their energy into Bitcoin or something like Bitcoin, basically Bitcoin, because there's nothing like Bitcoin that's going to replace Bitcoin, in my opinion.
Totally agree.
So that would be a very positive path. That would be a non-kinetic path, and that would be my preferred choice, because and what that essentially looks like is if enough human beings on the planet take their economic energy and remove it from the existing fiat system and put it into Bitcoin instead, it essentially decapitalizes that system. The reason that these centralized systems work is because they're issuing the money. They can create as much of it as they want. And as long as that condition exists, they can basically direct what happens. But if you remove everybody's economic energy from that equation, I think that the system that they have sort of collapses faster because, and this is probably going to happen regardless, but it's just a matter of what causes these things to happen sooner or later, right? So The way it is right now with AI spinning up, that's probably going to knock a whole ton of people off the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder. You're going to have more people who don't have an income, so on and so forth. Eventually, they're going to have UBI, probably. What does that look like? It looks like a lot of money printing. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means a lot of debasement, right? What does that mean? Purchasing power collapses. People will continue to look for ways to save themselves from that. Bitcoin is the most likely, in my opinion, is the most logical place to go.
It's the best by a long shot.
Yeah. So that's what a sort of positive non-kinetic pathway looks like to me. Like if you don't have that, then like all kinds of stuff is on the table. You know, you could have balkanization of the states in the United States of America. You could have potentially a civil war. You could have all kinds of things that aren't necessarily great. I hope we don't do those things.
Yeah. I'm a very optimistic person for somebody who has generators and a Faraday bag. I just have some deep intuitive feeling that things are going to work out well. And I'm a little spiritual, maybe even you could say kind of metaphysical in my thinking. And I think that we are creators of our reality in some, you know, whether it's direct or indirect way. So I try not to spend too much time scared effectively.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to exude a vibration of fear, but at the same time, you want to have agency, you want to be responsible, you want to insulate yourself from potential problems. And that's one, you know, I really like your thinking. I've enjoyed our conversations when we're out training. And I'm glad to have linked with you because it's one of the things that makes me feel better living in the urban jungle.
Oh, for sure.
You know, I have people in the area that know how to protect themselves, and that's relieving for sure.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. Well, do you have any final words of wisdom?
Wow, we ought to time that out. They would.
We could keep ripping. How long have we been?
This has been a cool conversation.
Hour
Really?
20. Oh, let's keep going. I mean,
It just blew by.
Yeah.
Geez, final words of wisdom. I don't know about final words of wisdom, but I'm a big fan of Bitcoin. Like, if you haven't discovered Bitcoin or you haven't looked into it, by all means, I highly suggest looking into it. I think it probably is the best chance people have if they're young to try to develop any sense of freedom in their life. It's probably the best path. I mean, look, you look at all the different kind of assets there are. You got real estate, you got art, you got equities, you got all these different things you can do. Why do people buy any of that stuff?
So they could project their capital into the future.
Right, but why? Like the reason. So I'll give you a flip side question to that. If you could just leave your money in dollars and the purchasing power of those dollars increased by 10% every year, would you buy any of that stuff?
Scarcity in money creates abundance in everything else.
Yeah, probably not. You probably wouldn't buy any of that stuff. People are doing it so that they can outrun inflation, right? So if that's your objective, why not go with the thing that's like got the best performance? Granted, last year wasn't that great. However, like you look over the arc of Bitcoin's time and you understand that like institutional adoption is only growing, will only probably continue to go. The regulatory environment is very positive. It's probably, from a de-risking perspective, it's probably better now from a risk-adjusted standpoint than ever before in history. You got major banks announcing that they're doing custody and spot trading. More and more that's happening all the time. You've got sovereign wealth funds getting involved, insurance companies getting, everybody's like Harvard, the endowments are buying it. Like it's at the point now where like quite literally central banks are now buying it. And I think that will also accelerate. So this is not going away. I'd say take a serious look. And then the other thing I'd suggest is, check out Citizen Rifleman. Like that's the other thing we're doing. The whole purpose of that is we're trying to take this concept of like firearms or like this scary, dangerous thing. We're trying to make it a more commonly understood in use thing. And the idea of having a rifle, knowing how to use it and training with people that you know is a civic duty. And it's completely normal as an American to do that. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I do have a couple more questions. I'm curious what your thoughts are because Trump has been making comments about getting rid of the IRS, replacing income taxes with tariffs. He's going after Powell pretty relentlessly, which is kind of shocking to see. You have Tether buying bonds. I believe they're buying Bitcoin. So we do have a very interesting setup for the potential that our current existing president does some really good things. And I think it's possible because I do think he wants to go down in the history books for doing good things, potentially. I mean, I'm very suspicious of politicians. But what do you think about that when Trump's making comments about the income taxes, hammering Jerome Powell? We got this Tether thing. We're going to export and the inflation.
I suspect that he's recognizing that the system has a lifespan and that we're near the end of it.
Yeah.
Like there has to be a systemic reset, like whether that's in 10, 20, 50 years, I don't know how long that's going to take, but it's coming. It's mathematically coming. It's unavoidable, right? So the question becomes, well, what is it going to look like? And what is America's position in all of that? And I think that this is just my opinion, but if you look at the cabinet that's surrounding him, a lot of those people are Bitcoiners.
Yes.
And I think they see Bitcoin as a potential bridge for America. I think they genuinely look at it as like, okay, well, the fiat dollar has got a lifespan. Don't know what that is in its current form. There's going to have to be some kind of a reset. What if we were to try to incorporate Bitcoin in this reset? And I think that's kind of the direction they're driving at. And this is not just conjecture. I mean, if you look at what the Trump family is doing, they're heavily involved. I think they just revealed that they own something like approaching, it's over $500 million of Bitcoin across their stuff. And I think they're continuing to add more. So they're very involved. And I think part of that is the whole sovereign thing. I think that was a huge wake-up call for those guys. This is the idea that you can be debanked and you can have your sort of financial capacity just taken away from you because you're on a team that the people in government don't like, or you believe things that they don't like, which is kind of scary. I mean, essentially, they don't like you, so they can take away your ability to feed yourself, conduct business, do all the things that a normal human would do.
Pretty crazy.
Right? I was watching this interview with Eric Trump where they asked him, like, why are you all about this Bitcoin stuff? Didn't you think that's a little, like a little odd? And he's like, well, you try getting debanked and you have to send $100 million as a transfer and you can't because all your accounts are frozen. He's like, that was a big wake-up call. I'm paraphrasing him, right?
Yeah,
This is not verbatim what he said, but that's what I got out of it. So I think, I think they realize that when you have these systems that are basically centralized, if someone who doesn't like you takes control of those systems, they can really mess you up. So, yeah, I think long-term, obviously it's not going away. Bitcoin, not going away. And basically everybody in the world is finally coming to that conclusion. Even Jamie Dimon, who, for like a decade, every time he was in Davos, he's like, no, this is just for criminals, right? But all the big banks are coming on board. Like in Davos just this last year, this is the first year I've ever seen the heads of big banks saying, yeah, this is the future, and we're excited about it. Never happened before.
Yeah, when Jamie Dimon was saying all the silly shit about, I don't know, I think he was on CNBC, and he's like, yeah, Satoshi could come back and double the supply or something. Yeah. I'm thinking, he's full of shit. That's FUD. Mm-hmm. He can pronounce this guy's name. He's the CEO of JP Morgan Chase. This guy knows. Yeah. And this is just FUD. This is just to keep the plebs or the peasant class away from this thing so they can figure out what to do with it. Precisely.
Because if you think about it, prior to the recent guidance, I mean, this guidance came out just in the last 6 months from, I believe, the OCC explaining to banks, this is how you can interact with Bitcoin and it is okay. We're approving this. Prior to that, it was like, if you're the head of a bank, you're looking at the whole Bitcoin ecosystem going, I have no horse in this race and I don't know how to get into it because we're not allowed to. So of course you would oppose it because that's potentially an existential threat to your entire business model.
Yeah.
But now that it's clear that they can be involved, you're starting to see them lean in. I think it's PNC has already got custody and spot trading. It's one of the largest banks in the world.
It's a pretty big deal. All right. Well, this has been real fun, man. This has been kind of all over the place conversation, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing the gear. Put something a little visually stimulating. Maybe you want to show the camera what you got there. If you're not in a state where you can
Pretty standard.
own something like this,
AR.
move.
Play carrier.
Yep. It's fun stuff. And
Yeah.
so where can people find you and information on the Citizen Rifleman?
Sure. So I'm on Twitter at Alex Stanczyk. The spelling will probably be in there somewhere.
Yep.
As far as Citizen Rifleman, this is something that we're launching. There will be an app that will be available. Not going to give you a URL, anything to look at yet because we're still developing it. But the concept is basically find people who are like-minded, train with them regularly, improve continuously. The whole Citizen Rifleman app is going to be designed around the concept of how do you measure your performance? How do you track it from month to month to see if you're actually improving? How do you connect with other like-minded people? And then we basically have certain types of shooting standards that you can do, basically tests. So it's like the group that we're training with right now. Every single time that we go out there, you know this, you've experienced this, right? We do what's called a cold bore pistol test, and we do a cold bore rifle test. And there's specific standards, and the standards are very high. They're hard to meet.
They are. Yes, they are.
They're hard to do, right? For everybody. Like these are not simple things, right? Like the pistol
air marshal
one
drill.
We're using the air marshal drill as one of the particular standards we're talking about, which is really hard, right? It's one of the toughest federal service pistol qualification tests that
For
there
the people
is.
who don't know, describe it.
You just go through various.
So it's from concealed.
Yeah, from concealed. Some of them are draw, engaging multiple targets, reloading, different things like that. The whole idea is to test accuracy and speed. You have very strict time requirements on every single stage. If you fail any of them, you fail the whole test. And then there's also point scores that are required. You have to be a certain level of accuracy. If you're too inaccurate, I think you can get 4 rounds outside of what's called the A zone and still pass. Outside of that, you fail. Right, so these are pass-fail evolutions. And the idea is you can track this performance from month to month. And then if you have a group of people you want to train with, you can create a team. And in that team, you can track your performance against your other team members. And eventually, we're going to have the capability for different teams in different areas around the country to actually compete against each other in these same formats. So for people who are out there, I hear this kind of stuff all the time. It's like, I'm really interested in this. I would like to learn this kind of stuff. I just don't know anybody. I don't know how to connect with anybody. That's going to be a big part of this, is that it's going to be all anonymous and heavily privacy focused. We're designing it from the ground up so that we don't have access to your personal information. We don't want access to your personal information, but you will be able to look at a specific region and go, look, I'm in the Southeast Florida region, for example. I want to get the app and I want to start training and learning how to do these types of things, but I also want to connect with like-minded people near me. You will be able to do that as well.
Yeah, I'm excited for that. It's pretty rad.
Yeah, we're excited too.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Alex. I've enjoyed this, and I look forward to our next range day.
Likewise.
Yes.
All right.
Cool, man.
We lock our doors, we encrypt our hard drives, and we use strong passwords. But most people leave one thing wide open: their phone line. SIM swap attacks are one of the fastest growing methods of digital theft. In minutes, a hacker can clone your accounts, reset your passwords, and drain your life. Unfortunately, this is not science fiction. It happens every single day. Afani is the only mobile service protection designed exclusively to protect you from SIM swap attacks. Afani offers military-grade encryption on their product and offers up to $5 million of SIM swap insurance. And to date, there have been exactly 0 SIM swaps on any of Afani's over 50,000 protected accounts. So you don't need to live in fear, you just need to protect your weakest link. Go to afani.com/breedlove to secure your phone line today. Again, that's Afani, EFANI.com/breedlove. For the past 25 years, I've been reading roughly 1 book per week. Almost entirely difficult nonfiction books, the kind that really shift your thinking. Books on physics, money, power, psychology, spirituality, and philosophy. The real stuff. But I get it. Most people don't have time to read 50 books per year. So I hand-selected my favorite nonfiction books and distilled each one of them into a course that you can take in 50 to 100 times faster than it would take you to read the entire book. Each course gives you the key insights, mental models, and frameworks that matter. We launched with 15 book courses, and we are building toward a library of 100 by the end of year 1. So if you are a seeker of truth, wisdom, and personal growth, then my book course is for you. To sign up, go to course.breedlove.io. Again, that's course.breedlove.io. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, click here to find more just like it, and here to find our most recent episode. Also, make sure to like this video to help shine light on the corruption of money, and be sure to subscribe to this channel to stay connected.